Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to your Friday chat with Weston. A little under the hood action going on here on a very rainy Friday, Houston. I am so excited to have one of my old friends from years past. We've sung together a number of times, and now he and I both. We'll get into this a little bit today, but he and I both share this transition from performer to teacher. We're both sort of uh, got one foot in each pool right now, but I am so excited and thrilled to host Jason Ferrante, tenor and teacher extraordinaire. Let's see if I can figure out. I'm always like, okay, so I'm going to hide this, then I'm going to bring Jason in. He should be here in a couple seconds. Jason, can you? There you are. Can you hear me? Okay.
Yes, sir. Can you hear me?
Yeah, it's all good. All right, I'm going to pop over to Facebook really quick and share this to my fan page, and feel free to jump over to Facebook yourself and share it onto your social media um,
Let's do it.
things. So we just want to see if we can get as many people to watch as possible. Share to a page.
Everybody, come eavesdrop.
Yeah,
Creep.
exactly. This is definitely something that you'll want to eavesdrop upon, right?
I hope so.
It's so good to see you, man. It's
You
been a
too.
while. I guess the last time that we saw each other was that like that Lucia production that we did in Arizona.
That seems impossible to me. But it's probably right. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that Christine McIntyre and may he
We had
rest in peace,
yeah,
Joel
yeah,
Rev,
we had yeah, we had Tracy Doll as one of our Lucias.
Tracy Dahl,
Yeah.
and
Well,
Laura Whalen,
mm-hmm.
Canadian soprano. So like it was such a great cast. Bob Bro,
Yeah.
one of the Edgardos, Mark Panuccio, I think was the other.
Yeah. It was great because Tracy and I would hug each other all the time because it was one of those few times we were the appropriate height for each other. It was great.
That's so great, dude. That's so great. So, how are things in Miami? Everything going well for you there?
Yeah, tomorrow makes 6 months that Richard and I have been quarantined here, and we tend to favor the strict side of things. So I haven't stepped foot inside a building that's not this house during this thing. So we've had delivery. Being in the suburbs, it's actually easier. We live in a pretty neighborhood. The weather is it's 90 degrees and sunny and nice here, and that's what we've been doing. And we've been practicing almost. I mean, I teach a lot on here, but Richard been practicing every day and keeping it going. And yeah, patient.
Talk about a blast from the past. Lauren Kernow has just said, "Oh my God, what are you two doing?"
Lauren, you only really need one Ferrante, just one.
And yeah, I mean, where's the love? What do you think we're doing? We've come here to talk about you, of course.
About you, exactly. Welcome to the chat, Lauren. The best Marcellina, I swear. Yeah.
And beyond that, my goodness, that girl.
Right.
Hey, yeah. So how has COVID been going for you and Richard? I mean, other than staying home and staying safe, have you been able to have some creative outlets? I mean, I mentioned sort of in my intro that I know you're doing quite a bit of teaching these days.
Yeah. So I'm doing a lot of teaching. I teach at 6 young artist programs right now, and most of them so far have done distance programs. I teach voice for Wolf Trap, and we had a really successful summer this summer. We had all of the singers there on site. They created a bubble, sort of like the way the NBA was doing,
Yeah.
and it worked. And we taught remotely. They created some performances live. They did live auditions from the barns. It was great, and doing the same for other programs where I work, and that's keeping me busy. I haven't personally had the urge to get up and do too much singing on here, but I've really enjoyed seeing other people do it, and that's been great. Reading, studying things I should have studied a long time ago about singing. The both of us being having the Juilliard experience behind us, which I wouldn't trade for anything. But vocal pedagogy wasn't part of our curriculum. I worked with a master technician on the second half of my study, so that was good. but I've been trying to catch up with a lot of that. I don't find myself using the language as much still, but it's nice research. Yeah.
You're that interesting. Yeah. I mean, I think that there's, you sort of over time, you're in your experience, of course, as a singer, studying with different people or colleagues that that begin to teach, or people who you've met along the way, through perhaps education that ended up going straight into academia. You sort of have, I don't want to narrow it down to just two pools, but, it seems like there's the really knowledgeable sort of anatomical vocal pedagogy sort of approach to things. And then there's been, a handful or I mean, I don't know, I'm saying a handful. I mean, the danger, of course, right, is the very well-known singer that gets recruited to a university to teach when they, in fact, really aren't very skilled at communicating what it is that they're able to do, but they have the big name, so there's the big draw. But then, hopefully, no one's in that ballpark, but I'm sure in our experience, we could probably, think of a few. But then there's the sort of ideal candidate that has the practical experience. Christopher Walken, the practical experience, but also knows how to translate that so that you're able to communicate well with the student. And I think that knowing you as well as I know you, I'm certain that that's the experience that those kids are getting, and how incredibly fortunate for them to have you, which is so cool that you're able to work with such a variety of young professionals at these amazing programs. That's awesome.
Yeah, it's one thing that's happened over the years teaching at the programs is that I've taught multiple times singers that are coming out of our noted voice studios all over the country, you name it. So I've sort of, in a way, built this working language of what they're coming from, and I take advantage of it in the lesson. I'm not the kind of person that jumps at saying your teacher is wrong or this is wrong.
Right.
If there is something that triggers me like that, my answer is that it's incomplete. And yes, but, and it's that but part, that footnote that's left out a whole lot. And as far as yes, there are teachers that are, they have maybe never stood on stage, but are masters of vocal pedagogy.
Absolutely.
That have only sung. It's up to you to decide which one speaks to you the most. But
right.
In the end, for me, in the end, the common denominator of a good teacher, which can be either of those two, is the one that has this built-in, natural-born empathy for when they hear another sound that they feel it.
Right.
And there are famous singers that's what they do, and that's why they became teachers. And there are vocal pedagogy people that have never sung a role in their life who, when they hear a voice, they feel it. There are ones that don't do that, and if you're a vocal pedagogy master and you don't empathize, it's not going to go well. And if you're a great singer but you don't empathize with other sounds, it's not going to go well.
Right.
And that's what I think young singers really should look for, is that person's feedback of what they're feeling when they hear you, what you're feeling.
Right.
And that's a good sign. Yeah.
Right. Like I think if a teacher tries to approach a singer with just a preset list of things that that the student must then sort of apply to them, I think it's a dangerous road to go down, because you're not giving an opportunity for what the student might already be bringing in a very positive way. Yeah,
and the star folks, they're useful in a different way. If I'm already a great singer and I'm going to do my first butterfly, I want someone like Catherine Malfitano to talk to me about how it felt.
Absolutely.
And that's what that's what we have to know, that's something that many of us won't be able to replicate, that stardom. And it's not the stardom that's the fun part of it, but that having done it repeatedly under pressure,
the experience.
That's just something reading a book can't teach you.
Right. Or, as we all know, you start looking at a piece of music and somebody might sing it through and be like, okay, well, that was really impressive. I'm going to have to get another coat of paint because you just peeled that one off. Exactly. You got to be aware that the duet that follows, if you try to sing this aria like this, you're not going to have anything. And so only somebody who really has that experience of, like you say, doing it over and over and over again can really be able to approach that type of coaching or that type of, mentorship, if you will, in a positive way that's going to allow for a better understanding of like, aha, okay, so this this is when to save. This is when I can give a little more. This is when you can't tell by looking at it, but the orchestra is super thick here. So you got to make sure that, whatever.
Yeah, and
yeah, those are important things to think about.
I was just working earlier this week with a soprano that sings some dramatic soprano repertoire, and we had this chat of, I was like, I've never sung the role of butterfly, but I've stood 4 feet from one for
I bet you have, just not on stage.
cumulatively like 2 years of my life, right? And that doesn't mean I know how to sing the part, but I can tell you something valuable I had to say to her was, in the lower middle, most butterflies from 3 feet away, there's a little bit of breathiness going on because the parts they're doing all of this activity. And I said, if you put your ear on the fridge, you can hear the fan, but if you walk down the hall, you might not. And that's larger instruments deal with that. And if you've never stood on stage, that might not be something you empathize with.
Right. I like that analogy. I like that a lot.
So basically, but the end game of that was like, please don't make your lower middle sour in order to cut. It's okay. I'm 3 feet from you, and I understand what that means, and that's so I ask singers to really at least some point check in with somebody that's heard a professional voice from a few feet away, and can empathize with that.
Well, and I mean, if you've experienced it, you've experienced it, but it's that bizarre phenomenon of being in a small rehearsal room sometimes with a bigger voice, and you think to yourself, like, what in the world is going on here? And then you get out into the 4,000 seat house and you're like, oh, that is completely different. And it's like the acoustic warms up the sound, and it all of a sudden everything starts to make sense in a way that in that little rehearsal room, I remember very specifically the first time I had that experience, and I was like, okay, that makes a lot of sense, I guess. But yeah, it's interesting. Well, you mentioned that you had the benefit of having a master technician for the second part of your training. Who are you referring to there?
So I did all my formal training was at Juilliard. I did my undergrad and grad and a year of the Opera Center there. So that was 7 years. I have no horror stories. I loved it. I did. I know it's that you would think, but I don't know. I went in at 17 and they sort of took me under their wings, and I had a really good time. The first part of my studies was with Cynthia Hoffman, who is still on faculty there. And to this day, I can't tell you. I didn't know until I met Cynthia. I knew how to engage with my own noise making, but I never really thought about what I looked like doing it. And I owe her a lot of credit for setting me on that path. And then as I started growing up a little bit, I landed in Beverly Johnson's lap, who really saved me to teach me that there were ways to do what I was doing on purpose and not just play darts with my technique. And, and we're talking about a lady that was in her early 70s when I was born.
Oh, wow.
And she said she put me on the path of taking responsibility for figuring it out. And I got to sit in on a lot of lessons. She let me do that. And she once told me, she's like, because she knew I wanted it. I taught my first lesson when I was 21. And
you taught your first voice lesson?
I did. And even in high school, I went to a conservatory high school, and I would sit in practice rooms with my classmates and coach them. And and this all goes back to I have this empathy. I hear a voice, I feel it. I don't just hear it. So that's what I was able to do. And and she let me sit in. I did a lot of that. And she told me once, she's like, you shouldn't be a teacher. Don't be a teacher. But she did say, she said, you'll be a good one. But she kept saying, like, angry, pointing her finger at me, don't do that.
Now, rumor has it you do a pretty good impersonation of her.
Well, it's not bad. It's a pretty good one, actually.
But I have to credit the person that inspired me. I don't know if she'll catch this or not, but our friend Hanan, who does the best Beverly Johnson.
Hanan Alataro, we love you.
Yeah, she taught me that. But the Beverly impression I like to do, which also tells a lot about her personality and how she dealt with you, is I'd given a recital and I gave her a cassette, not to date myself. Next week I said, Miss Johnson, did you listen to that cassette? And she said,
well, I thought I was going to listen to a recital by Jason Ferrante. but instead I got someone screaming at me.
The
Nothing
best
like
part, the best part when she was listening to it was Purcell songs.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, screaming.
Oh,
I've
amazing.
never been able. I couldn't scream if I tried. I'm not a loud singer, but I knew what she meant. I definitely did.
Sure. Now, at what point did you begin studying with her? Was this while you were still in undergrad, or did
Yeah,
you?
late undergrad, early masters, and then beyond until she passed
Okay.
away.
Yeah, yeah. I've heard such amazing stories about that woman, and I wish I would have had the opportunity to know her. But um, so you say that she saved you. What do you mean? Were you getting to a place technique wise that you felt a bit unsure of, or was you mentioned throwing darts? I don't know.
Yeah, yeah. The hard parts became a game of chance for me, and I would lean into whatever natural vocal abilities or talent I had and hope for the best. And it was like blindfolded darts, really. And once in a while, I'd get a bullseye, but it wasn't on purpose. And
Right.
my brain doesn't work that way. And I didn't realize that was what I had a deficiency in with singing. I didn't know that it couldn't be just rooted in emotions and talent and quality. And
Right.
she showed me that with a plan, you could actually make things happen on purpose. And then after a while, your vocal body would do things because you've spent the time teaching it. And then you could go and do that art that you're hoping for. But
Wow.
that's that's every athlete, right? Like, I tell my students all the time, somewhere Michael Phelps is lifting weights, right? But I've never seen him swim with them.
Right.
And
Right.
it and that's what I mean by saved me. Sort of, she told me that I could take responsibility for what I was doing, and that made me sing better and made me teach. Yeah.
So within that plan, was it something more specific with like vocal exercises, or was it something specific to do with your breath, or a combination of sort of everything that one could imagine? I mean, is there anything
Yeah.
you can share specifically that was like one of the big aha moments that was like, oh, okay, now this makes sense, you know?
One of the biggest aha moments, and it influences a lot of my own ethics, vocal ethics when I'm teaching, is to really understand. She taught me that there was a strong difference between the hard matter in my apparatus and the stretchable matter, the canvases, the soft palate, the tongue, the chest expansion, and that those two looks took on different shapes simultaneously, and that the hard matter needed something consistent throughout. So something as basic as being able to move from E to ah and have my soft palate change, but not my hard palate. The
Mhm.
idea that I could pat my head and rub my belly, that
Simultaneously.
yeah. So to spend my first year with her, just being able to go from E to ah in the same jaw structure, that took a lot of work for me. But that then got me to a point where I was singing on the staff in one space. Then I had this wealth of space left to sing high. So my undergrad year, I would sit on the floor of the library at Juilliard looking for pieces that didn't have high notes on evals. And I'm like, that's a terrible way. That's a terrible way to live on that nasty ass old green carpet. That carpet, I can still see
Yeah.
myself in the back of the stacks. I'm like, oh, I like this song. Nope, there's an A flat on an E. Forget it. But then once I got the structure to be paved and cemented and then give it a chance to dry, then I never dreamed that years later I would do things like Carmina Burana. You know what I mean? Like the
Right. Right.
idea. Gosh, if you're a young singer and you're watching this, I would do anything to go back to age 22 and sing a couple things again.
Wouldn't that be
And
amazing?
hats off to my beloved teachers and mentors who made me get up and do things that were too hard for me, so that helped me learn. And if you catch this, I'm looking at you, Ed Berkeley. You let me sing Brigella in Ariadne in Aspen with Julius Rudel conducting,
Yeah.
and it's so high and difficult. And I was getting the chills. I was working with a tenor recently who has sung the part a bunch, and I was having PTSD, and it was so much work. But Beverly and also Rita Shane, who I worked with
Oh
a little
yeah.
bit, the
Yeah.
two of them, they double teamed me to learn how to sing that thing, and
Wow.
they let me go out, and it wasn't perfect. and I have a tape of it somewhere, and I won't listen to it. However, I came out of that knowing so much about what I needed to do. And the point of that comment is that our mentors like Ed, they and my teachers at Juilliard, I felt for me especially, they didn't make me feel bad for having to figure it out. And at the same time, I understand if you're a young singer why that place wouldn't be for you. Because at the same time, while you're figuring it out, the New York Times might be watching, right? So that's
That
that
was
was a different level of stress. But if you are a healthy egomaniac, um, there are some benefits to it. But I can't tell you that was so important that yes, they challenged me, but they didn't make me feel bad for not being perfect.
Yeah, I always, I mean, my first experience with Juilliard was being brought in as an outsider into the Juilliard Opera Center. And so for me, I was immediately surrounded by folks who had been there 6 years, 7 years. These were people who knew the game. And one of the first projects that I did at Juilliard was the baritone. I was the baritone soloist for the Britain War Requiem with David Atherton at Carnegie Hall. And I was like, we're doing what? Oh, and then, just, of course we have access to Carnegie Hall. And of course and I remember we did that on the day that the coalition forces fell in Iraq. And I remember it was a completely sold out house, and the New York Times was there reviewing it and everything. And I was like,
Mm-hmm.
hey, well, this is going to be a different situation than what it was when I was in Bloomington, when the Bloomington Herald Times student reviewer, or, whoever it was that was reviewing shows, So there was an aspect of sort of like, and for me, that was, I had come to Juilliard, and I had heard such great things about Stephen Smith. And so I began my work with him at that point. Well, with his technique and the way that he teaches, he really does sort of require the students to sort of start from a clean slate and really adopt his principles of singing, which I, on one hand, was terrified of, because I thought, well, here are these performance experiences where, I mean, my talent, and like you said, it's like the throwing darts and doing whatever got you to where you're at. But at the end of the day, I don't know if I was able to really explain what I was doing. I had a really, really motivational and inspirational first teacher who, technically speaking, didn't really go much into depth about stuff. It was more about just encouragement and
Was that
here.
was that Jerry?
Yeah, Jerry Dalter. Yeah, who I respect dearly. He was a father figure to me. He was a super. I wouldn't probably be in this industry if it weren't for him, because he was. I mean, he cast me as Figaro when I was 18 years old in The Marriage of Figaro. It was yeah. I mean, I remember going into his office so many times, crying with my score, like, I don't know how I'm going to memorize this. And he was like, "You're fine, Weston. You're going to be fine." And but yeah, it was like, I'm certain that I left undergrad with a significant amount of muscular effort in my singing, and for better or worse, he certainly built my voice in a very strong way. Um, but I needed to unlearn and release some of that muscular effort, which my teacher in grad school at Indiana, James McDonald, was incredibly helpful with, in sort of coming at it from this sort of, Bernoulli principle of letting the airflow lead, and none of the muscular effort involved in creation of the tone. And I learned what Alexander technique was for the first time, and what Pilates was, and started thinking, like you say, a little more purposeful about your singing. And then, so then I kind of felt like I was a clean blank canvas. And so when I got to Juilliard, I was sort of mentally in a place like, okay, sure, what specifically should I do now? And then I felt like a lot of those, specificities within Stephen Smith's technique were really, really, really helpful. And I mean, I studied with him for 8.5 years or so, and still to this day, his philosophies on, how to learn new rep and the importance of understanding the two basic fundamental principles of singing. I mean, so much of what he teaches is ingrained in my singing and in my teaching. But it's interesting.
I have such a great deal of respect for Steve, because I've actually, some of the younger singers I've worked with, some in the teenagers, I've given his book to several of them as gifts, because
Yeah.
Let me tell you something. I find this is a whole nother episode of Dr. Phil, but I am a better person as a teacher than I am as a singer. I know that, and I
Pretty
find
common.
something I admired about Steve's work is his ethics are so extraordinarily high. And if you want the person standing in the room to trust you, that's a good place to start. And I don't mean not cussing. I mean, I have the mouth of a sailor when I teach if I trust the singer. I don't mean any of that. But I
Right.
mean having such responsibility to this task you've been Venmo'd to do well, right? That,
Yeah.
I mean, like, when I'm teaching, my phone is usually not in the room.
Right. Right.
And I do that even though I know it could be in the room on quiet, but just to say to myself, not even to virtue signal to the student, but to myself, this has to matter
Right.
when you're doing.
My focus is right here. Right.
Yeah, and it's not about showing them that I'm better than anybody. It's reminding myself, you've got a job. And a lot of my students and friends accuse me of overusing analogies. So here's another one. But somewhere here down on South Beach in one of our fancy restaurants, there's a 5-star chef that's won a James Beard Award. And they'll get a customer at 7:45 at night on a Tuesday. They still need to produce the
Right.
same and one thing, and I'm going to call out not by name, but I hope some of you empathize with this. Teachers, if you are getting on your phone during a lesson hour and then announcing what famous person's on the phone with you, I'm not making this up. This happens.
Oh, trust me. I
and
think of at least a handful of
and
experiences.
if you are also a person that is going to finish your lunch and take a nap in that same lesson, you've got to do some work.
Yeah.
When I say you, I mean the student. Please don't go back and eat a meal that sucked.
Right. Right.
You know, why? There's a bigger psychology here is like, what makes where's this this syndrome coming where you feel like you're trapped in a situation that you inherently know is not right.
Right.
Oh, and I feel like if somebody's studying with me and they get that, please go somewhere else.
Right. Right.
Like we have got to not take this personally, but our teaching ethics, they've got to be there, and I think those transcend political belief, religious belief, your sexuality, name it. That's just decoration.
Exactly. That has nothing to do with what we're actually there in front of one another to do. You're absolutely right. Talking about Stephen Smith's ethics. I mean, he was the one. I remember one of our first sort of like, he likes to give a spiel to his entire studio, which I've learned so much about my teaching through watching him and seeing how efficient he is at what he does. Right. I mean, this idea of being able to gather everyone together and say, like, here's everything that I don't want to say, 43 times. So let's get together and let's all pay attention and let me read this to you, is phenomenal. But then I remember him getting to this one part in the spiel where he talked about there will not be a codependent relationship between the teacher and the student. And he kind of looked up from his, his materials, and he said, I do not need any of you in my life to better who I am as a person. I'm perfectly happy in my life. So at any given point, if any of you are interested in changing studios or leaving my studio to, whatever, feel free to do that. I had such a personal, close relationship with, my first voice teacher and even in graduate school that I think I initially heard that and I was like, oh my gosh, what is this relationship going to be like, But then very quickly you find out, because there's no strings attached, essentially, that it's like, oh, wow. So I can be completely honest 100% of the time, and you're going to be completely honest 100% of the time, because we're not trying to manipulate, or we're not trying to, do any of that sort of tightrope walking. Instead, he's able to honestly share his thoughts about what I'm doing, and I'm honestly able to, create and sing in a way that I don't feel like I have to dance around, like what you said. It's like, I don't have to pretend that he's never eaten anything in that lesson. But I'm just saying, somebody who would have that experience, I can't even imagine what that would be like. Like, as the student sitting there going, oh, I know we're on the clock, but I'll just go ahead and wait for you to eat your salad and take a nap.
Yeah.
It's unbelievable.
It is. And, so working at the programs, and especially with Wolf Trap, where we have like a good 30 to 31. I'm making up a number. It feels like that. Singers in the between the studio and the Feline program.
Right.
Every year I get somebody comes in and I'm like, okay, well, who's your home based teacher? Blah 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 blah. And incidentally, at these programs, I make it clear if someone doesn't want to have a private lesson, we're good. I know, God forbid, if I had a main stage assignment as a young artist and I just gotten something that clicked, the last thing I want is someone to potentially take me off of that click. So I get it if you don't want to have the one-on-one lesson.
Sure.
I've got it down to like when they tell me who it is, I know with a good poker face what I'm going to be dealing with on a communication level. So
Sure.
Steve, if you end up watching this, hi, we're talking about you in a good way.
Gabriel Walker just chimed in. He says, "I always say Steve hasn't had a bathroom break in 30 years."
He might miss something. Why would I don't get up and listen either. And
Exactly.
But when they come in and they tell me who they work with, my job isn't to try to convert you by any means. If it's a good teacher, I have enough experience knowing what they're telling you that I want to amplify it for you. I actually want to send a Wolf Trap singer. I don't want to single out teachers, but I think singling some out as an example in a good way is a useful thing. Every time at Wolf Trap, when someone comes into me and they study with Bill McGraw at CCM, I know this is going to be a beautiful experience because this person is being told straightforward information. And then my job is I want to amplify and try to clarify some of the things that I know they're talking about. Send you back to CCM in September and it goes better for you.
Right.
You know, and that's the goal. And then sometimes I'm like, oh, this is going to be tricky. Or like you have some, I know what your problems are and they don't have anything to do with your actual instrument. And it's my job to keep an open mind and wait for those problems to manifest themselves. And look, I don't mean to play like Real Housewives of voice teaching, but there are some teachers, most of the time, if they're at one of the programs, their student might be a little more reluctant to work with me because that teacher gets mad.
Right. Yeah, there is sort of like this protective umbrella that you see sometimes around studios, and you're like, what are you scared of your student doing? Getting some good information from another source? I mean, at the end of the day, aren't we here to try to, support the people who we are in, sort of, they're in our hands to sort of get them to that next level? I mean, for a long time, when I started to realize how tricky it is to navigate this industry and trying to bridge those gaps between anywhere from high school to college, from college to grad school, from grad school to young artist programs, from young artist programs into getting management, once you experience that path yourself, I made it one of my goals in life to help others, so that when I'm when I'm singing at, Seattle Opera or Portland or wherever, I'm able to work with the young artists and say, okay, so let's do a masterclass. Let's get together. Let me talk to you about, how to do your taxes. Let me talk to you about, who might you want to start, kind of keeping an eye open for as far as, management, and just understanding like what that next leap might look like, and that it doesn't have to be so terrifying, but it actually can be, like you say, purposeful. It's like when, again, you don't want to be throwing the darts and just hoping for something to land, but you want to have sort of a plan set forth so that you're able to actually make a intelligent decision in those next steps.
So have you guys ever hired a babysitter?
Of course, yeah.
Would you expect some sort of character references on them?
I would hope so.
Right. I wish we could do that with teachers.
Wouldn't that be great?
This is kind of pointed, but when there are some emotional issues with students from a studio, there's one big common denominator that I see, and that is that where the teacher had a certain gene in them that needed satisfaction of having applause.
Yeah.
And it never came. So they wanted to fly and couldn't. The answer is not to teach someone who can and strap yourself to their back until they can no longer. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, that is not a successful methodology.
Yeah, but let me tell you, it happens a lot. And voice students are not an outlet for you to live vicariously. That is not why you teach someone. And when I see somebody, oh, this is insert name of singer here, I have to take this call. Really? Really? And
Yeah. What exactly is the point of saying that? So that you think that I am this important person, so that then you even more so cling on to my insecurity and probably inability to actually do the job. You know, it's
and
like,
yeah, and the funny part is, at least in my experience, the singers the ones that I work with who are having a super duper career, they're so totally successful. Those are the hardest workers. Those are the ones that come in sweat clothes, hair back, glasses on, who are like, talk to
let's
me,
do
because
this.
I have so much noise going on around me in my life that I can't even hear how do I do on this pitch. I
Right.
That's what's funny. They're not the ones sipping tea and bringing dogs into the studio. However, the teacher who wanted that for themselves is
Yeah.
using their fame to vicariously pretend that's who they are. And we have a responsibility to call it out. Find what are your character references on these people that you're locking yourself in a room for 60 to 90 minutes with. Like,
Yeah. Yeah. And spending $250 to $300 on, you know, it's like,
and you're not exaggerating. That's an actual number.
I know, I know. That it's sort of terrifying at what it's come to.
Yeah.
But
It's
yeah,
a lot.
yeah,
Listen, I had a couple people get upset with me recently because I have issues with ridiculously large fees,
right,
and the footnote on that is fees that don't really correspond with the source that they're coming from.
sure,
Um, I'm allowed to have an issue with that. That doesn't mean you should stop charging that, but I'm allowed to not agree with it. And that's the problem. We have to get out of this culture of I disagree, so you're wrong. No, I disagree, so you're different. That's
right,
that that's a different. You are welcome to charge that much, and I'm welcome to tell a singer you don't need to pay 250 to have the same emotional issues as the person charging it. I don't think it's necessary. We have been through. Listen, we have gone through this quarantine. I have in the past 20 years. I've lost important people in my life. I've had health scares. You name it. Who has time to be afraid to say what you need to say? Who has time to? It's a waste of time, because the minute you say I've got a lot of information to give you, it's not going to cost you 40% of your monthly rent. Let's do it. Then you're good.
yeah,
You know, and
yeah.
some people only want to wear Prada, and that's their prerogative. I'll tell you though, it's hard to do in quarantine when you're not making any money. That's for sure.
Yeah, you got
Yeah,
that
we
right.
are we are all at the Goodwill right now. Let me tell you.
Yeah, okay. So you mentioned, you know, going back in time just a little bit, you know, when you first got into let's say the master's program in Juilliard, what sort of repertoire were you singing? I know that when you and I met for the first time at Wolf Trap, let's say Gabriel Walker, I just noticed he said, Russell Thomas says he was agreeing with everything that we were just saying. There's no shame in disagreeing. He was like, you know, but Gabriel said, exactly, people are out here paying rent and bill money for less. Yeah, exactly. I mean, you know, it's there's a fine line between making sure that you charge what you are worth and what you feel that the information is necessary of. But then there's an exceedingly, you know, sort of, it becomes greedy after a while. And I think that, you know, it's who knows. You know, it's such a subjective industry. It's such a subjective everything. It's hard to sort of put a price on it. But I mean, I don't know. It's tricky.
P.S. Any singer, young, old, experienced, inexperienced, an hour with Mr. Thomas would be like 10 hours with somebody else. Do it.
Amen.
Yeah.
That guy knows his stuff, you know, and I've been fortunate enough to sing alongside him. And yeah, I mean, it's like there's some people who is sort, you know, like you say, you spend some time 3 feet away from them, and you're like, well, that was a voice lesson there. You know, it's like you can learn a lot. You can learn a lot.
Oh yeah, I remember I did a Rigoletto with you, Russell. I know you're watching. And those opening lines between the Duke and Borsa, I just wanted to echo back at him the way he was singing. It was
Yeah,
great.
inspirational. Yeah,
What's wrong with that? This isn't a contest. It's great. And if
exactly.
it were, I would lose. So no, thank you.
I think most people would lose to Russell in a contest of yeah, Borsa versus the Duke. So
yeah, something about Masters rep or something. I don't
yeah, yeah. You know, when you and I met one another, we were at Wolf Trap early on. It was my first summer. I don't know if you'd been there before. If that was your.
We were both there the same time.
Yeah, 2005 and in 06, right? Yeah.
5 and 6.
Yeah, yeah. And by that time, am I wrong saying that most of your rep was sort of character tenor? Uh,
Well, that's where it was going,
right,
and I have to give Kim Whitman at the time, who was running Wolf Trap, so much credit for being so such a good mentor for me, and she allowed me to do a big mix of things. And here's the thing: is like I know every character tenor I know says this, so please roll your eyes when I say this. It's totally cool. I get it, but I like this noise. I always have,
I
and
love your voice.
no, I love this noise. I'm able to sing certain things, and I love it. I'm also aware that I'm a 5'2", very cute, adorable little 5'2", right? And what was going to get me on stage quickest?
Right.
And I don't have any regrets because I've had such a good time, and it's been peppered with the occasional like Carmina Burana, Elijah, Messiah, all that stuff. It's great. It's a good time.
Well, and
Yeah,
I,
I
I
will say this at Juilliard. I just sang whatever sound, I did goodness. I know I did one of the last things I did was covering Talmino for the JOC flute. And
mhm,
then as soon as I was professional and I was at boardroom tables of 5 people with clipboards who don't sing, I was too short.
mhm,
Um,
mhm.
but I don't have a fundamental problem with that. And now at newly 45 years old, I can tell you something that I wasn't brave enough to say 20 years ago. I am not wired to have taken on the career lifestyle that I could have had I sunk my teeth into saying, okay, I'm going to commit to this. I'm going to sing Nemorino, Ottavio, Ferrando, and Così constantly, and I'm going to fight like mad to say I'm not too short.
Right,
I wasn't wired to take on those pressures.
right,
And that, looking back, I know now, helped me make a very easy choice. Was like, okay, get out there. I've done over 80 roles now. I mean, granted, some of them are like 2 seconds long, but I've had that variety, and it's been very satisfying. And any pieces that were missing, I feel so fulfilled from working with other singers. And I'm way more nervous watching a singer I've worked with go out and perform
right.
than when I do it
And
myself.
stepping on stage yourself. Well, the only reason I bring that up is from a marketability standpoint, and saying that I, I sincerely hope you didn't think that me even mentioning character tenor would even suggest the fact that something was missing, or that one wouldn't like the sound of that voice, because
Oh no, no way.
okay, because my whole point in even mentioning that was to say that, like, here is an example of someone who, in my opinion, is very intelligent and realized that you could market yourself in a way, like you said, to hit the stage and start actually making a living as a performer. And that's one of the things I'm teaching in advanced opera class at UMKC, where I'm on full-time faculty now,
Yeah.
where I've sort of made it my mission to teach them, or to try to teach them, all of the information that we tend to not get in school. And so you end up graduating, and you're like, I never learned about how to market myself, or that we're supposed to be, sort of thinking along those lines of, networking and social media and so forth. And so that's one of the things that I'm trying to bring along. But marketability is so significant, especially in today's market. But I say this, and I hope this isn't offensive, but it's like, you have the voice of you have a gorgeous instrument, a romantic tenor voice, a beautiful instrument. Who I remember when we were together at Wolf Trap, though, you were singing some character tenor stuff, and then later on, I know you've sung, like you said, like 80 roles,
Yeah.
and so you've had a very successful, diverse repertoire in a career, probably because you were super smart and saw that challenge,
Oh yeah.
and decided to market yourself in a way. And I think at the end of the day, it's like, how are we? This is a business. This is a job, and how are you going to put yourself in a place where you are marketable, and that you are, I mean, hell, that's why I ended up getting a prosthesis at the beginning of my career, because I realized that too many people were very cautious. How are we going to hire a baritone with only one hand? And I
Well,
was,
yeah. And can I give a little funny
of course,
story real
please,
quick?
please.
Do you remember when we did Lucia?
Yeah,
I Such a great moment. I remember the one rehearsal. I knew my words, and I mean I speak Italian, grow up with people, so whatever. But knowing your words wasn't a big deal. But in that little aria that Arturo sang, I had to look at you and I said, "La man mi porge Enrico," And you just gave me this look like,
And I'm sure that I gave you my prosthesis, who I don't know if you helped me name Giorgio Armani. That's the name that I came up with. Giorgio Armani. Oh, you know who that was? Oh wait, no, maybe it was Daniel Mon. I can't remember. I think anyway. But there is this sort of, I don't know. There are certainly gatekeepers in this industry that think that 5'2" is too short for anybody to be romantic, and if you're a certain size, you can't be. And I don't know. It's something.
Oh yeah, I was in the this is a true story, you guys. When I was still in school, I did the Albanese Puccini competition.
Yeah.
And I made it to the finals of it, which we would go over and sing in that brownstone on the east side with 45 people at tables. And two of our sacred cows were at that table. I won't mention their names because one of them is no longer living. And I walked into the room, and it's not like they were that far away, right? And one looked at the other and went. So what do I do? As I went 5'2".
Is that what you said?
Yeah, I didn't win anything.
Just in case you were wondering.
For whatever it's worth, young singers if you're listening into this, I didn't win a damn thing, and I called those people out in front of their colleagues. But the recently passed Steve DeMaio called me to say, Licha wants you to come over and coach.
Oh, that's
wonderful. I did. I spent 2 hours with her singing just whatever arias I had at the time, and I remember singing Quanto è bella for her.
Wow.
And it was such a rewarding experience. So I left that experience without a dime to my name, but something more useful. And when it goes to knowing early on what you were going to do well, I never auditioned for Santa Fe, Glimmerglass, or St. Louis. Great programs, awesome. But because I knew the experience I needed was singing and acting with boards under my feet. So I went for 5 summers to Aspen and Tanglewood, where I did roles. I didn't leave with a dime from either place, but I did leave having done roles with people like David Zinman, Julius Rudel, James Conlon, Seiji Ozawa. That was the kind of experience that I knew I needed. I didn't need an incubator. I was like, I need to go, and that's why it was useful.
It's so interesting. I mean, Santa Fe is one of the programs that I did in my training. I spent 2 summers out there. In fact, the second summer I was there, I began my relationship with the Royal Germont in La Traviata. I was covering Mark Delavant out there, which was he and his wife had their daughter or son. I can't remember if it was a boy or girl, but they had their child, and he had to leave, and so it left me the opportunity to sing all the rehearsals. Like we went, I sang it a number of times. Sandra Radvanovsky was my Violetta. Wow. And then Massimo Giordani was my Alfredo, who during the final room run, I remember I was singing and I got to the Di Provenza, and I was so nervous. John Crosby was conducting, and like it was at that moment where just sort of everyone realized, like, oh yeah, we're doing the final room run of Trav, and Mark isn't here, so let's all go down and hear if Weston knows what the heck he's doing, And I just some people, Brad Woolbright and so forth, they all started sort of appearing, and I was like, oh God, I'm so nervous right now. And the way it was staged was that I was sort of singing to Alfredo over this desk, and he looked at me and he was like, coraggio. And I was like, I don't know the words. And he was like, Di Provenza di Marisol. I said, Di Provenza. He was like, Chi corti cancello. He was literally feeding me like every single line. And I was like, afterward, I don't know why I just got so nervous for the aria, but I was just like, oh my God, thank you so much. But anyway, I did have that type of experience in Santa Fe my second year. But like having done those 2 programs, there's so much emphasis surrounding the big house audition and the scenes program at the end. And then really you're making up the chorus of all these, main stage shows. Yeah. And then later, as I was spending the summer in Aspen between my first and second year at Juilliard, which I had already finished doing Santa Fe, the previous 2 summers, I had this experience that it's like I had the opportunity to coach with these amazing conductors and these amazing people, and not be in such an environment where it was like, okay, go, but it was like, I don't know, it felt more like an educational opportunity to really gain some knowledge and some, experience working with, these, Julius Rudels and the David Simmons and the, people who really are just like, wow, that was amazing.
That was great for me because I've always known that in the end there were going to be very few opportunities where I was cast the veto vote in an artistic situation.
Uh-huh.
I'm never going to be Cavaradossi. There's always some Goro somewhere, right? So
Sure.
my goal has always been to try to make those experiences as high quality for myself as possible. And that's, someone that still hasn't stepped foot on our most famous stage in the country, you know what I mean?
Sure.
And it's about, can I sleep at night with the quality that I'm offering? And that's what was important to me. And that what's the big end game in that discussion is that identifying what's most important to you will probably dictate how you're going to work. And I just said that I just had a lesson before we signed on here.
Yeah.
I'm not naming names, but a really good baritone working on Germont of all things.
Yeah.
And we were like, we have to identify the end game first because that's going to dictate the journey. And next time you open Google Maps and you have your home on there, and then it says, where are you going? That's what it asks you first. And then
Right.
it tells you the journey. And too often we just sort of launch out and we do vocal technique things and we do sent it resumes and who did your headshots and pay so and irrelevant person $500 for a consultation, right? But what's your end game? And you find yourself getting to the end of your career having never established your destination in the first place.
Well, what are speaking more specifically about that? I mean, with in games, I mean, what are some options that that you encourage your students to think about when they're talking about their in games?
What's your repertoire going to be?
Yeah, yeah,
What level? What sort of like? It sounds so cold, but sort of what fee level do you see yourself realistically working in? You know what I mean? It's like, remember, was it Bob? Was it, God rest his soul, Bob Orth, who would talk about being the best singer in his price range?
yeah.
You know, where do you see yourself going with that? How often do you want to do work? Where geographically would you like to live? Do you want to have offspring? All of these things.
Yeah.
And then when you know your end game, that might help you choose the kind of person you want to have on your team. And having a small team, these are people who, when they talk to you, you don't take it personally.
Mm-hmm.
And so, if I look at a really successful soprano I work with, her team is her husband, me, a coach, and the agent. That's 4 people that can criticize her and it not be taken personally.
Right.
And that building that team is so important. And the wider you cast the net, the harder it is to say, I ask people, I love when somebody comes into me. The first thing I ask a new student is, who have you worked with? Not so that I know sort of, okay, I know what this person's influence has sounded like and what they've looked like.
Mm-hmm.
Some of them will name 2 or 3 names. When I get like the 12, 13 different names, that tells me a lot about not even how they sing, but that end game hasn't been fully established.
Well, I don't know about you, but I mean, I would have greatly benefited from having this exact conversation maybe 20 years ago, because that was something that really only became clear to me, really with the direction of, when I spent a good deal of time in my professional career represented by Caroline Woodfield.
Mm-hmm.
And she was one of the first people to really lay it out for me in a way of such specificity of like, this is the repertoire that I see you in. This is the niche that we're going to create for you that then will be, I think it's obviously, kind of always a crapshoot a little bit with like, well, I think that this repertoire works. And I think that, but at the end of the day, it's such a subjective thing that sometimes you can't get an entire panel to agree on something. So, but yeah, it's like understanding what kind of life you want and then what repertoire you want to live in and whether or not you want to have children. All of these are such important things to think of because they really do define what type of career you would want to have or would have, based on all those different answers. That's incredible.
Yeah, I mean, my path as a teacher, I definitely think it's been unusual in the fact that I've gotten to this point where I have, I still have some gigs to do. I have a leg in each side still, and I know that's coming to an end soon. I'm looking forward to it, but I still have a few more notes to scream in front of people. But I lucked out that I somehow, I feel #blessed that I've established sort of a little bit of a name as a teacher and teaching in good.
Yeah.
So I'm coming to this game now where schools are approaching me, and I can be choosy.
Yeah.
So like I said, it's not the part of the story about specifics is not necessary, but I've declined a couple offers of some places that I'm probably foolish for declining to teach because I don't want to live in the town.
Yeah. Yeah.
And why would I? Because it means a lot to me. Am I going to be a grumpy, upset person when I walk into 19-year-old Tenor who needs help? Like, so I have a list. I have a list of places that I'm like, if they ask, I'll say yes. And
sure.
Some of them actually no, and one of them was really close recently, but then COVID happened. Yeah, I want to be choosy because if I'm not the best person I can be, you're not going to get the best product from me.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think I spent, it's funny, you mentioned Bob Worth, the best singer at my price range. It's like, I feel very fortunate to have friends like you and Russell and Brian Email and Simon O'Neill and, those sorts of people. But at the same time, it's like, I'm not the most famous singer in the world. I've just been very fortunate to occasionally have had gigs with some of the most famous singers in the world, and to have had the pleasure of sometimes, coaching or teaching, some of those folks. But what I felt so, fortunate, or you threw it out there, the #blessed, about is that, over time I've struggled. Christine and I, we have a daughter, and I've thought about, well, she's getting older, and maybe it would be nice to have a university position. And I've stuck my toe into academia in the past. And every once in a while between gigs, I'll get bored and I think that, okay, I'm going to apply to like 12 different universities and see what happens, or something. And it's funny because where I ended up was here at UMKC, is firstly, it's a music conservatory. And so the level of work and the level of sort of appreciation for what it is that we do is already set with a standard, I think, that's pretty high. Secondly, Kansas City is such a fantastic city. So eventually when we move there, it's going to be, I love it there. It already feels like I have a bit of an artistic home there, having performed numerous times with the Lyric Opera Kansas City and the Kansas City Symphony. Michael Stern, by the way, was one of those people who I worked with at Aspen, right? So it's like these relationships, and I've known Deb Sandler since my time as a graduate student at Indiana. She was one of the first people to hire me when she was back at Kentucky. So it's so rewarding that when all the pieces do kind of find themselves fitting together, there is this sort of like piece that's like, yeah, I mean, don't get me wrong. I actually do want to continue singing for quite some time. And I feel like I'm just now sort of, believable with the gray in my beard in the repertoire that I sing. So Gracie, she wanted to sing a little bit, I think, my dog. How are your dogs?
Huh?
You still have dogs, yeah?
They're up on the shelf. They're ashes.
Oh, I'm so sorry. I just remember.
No, please. No, but this is what happens. There's an episode in The Golden Girls where Sophia and her sister Angela get together, and Sophia says, "How's that cat?" And Angela goes, "The same cat I had 30 years ago."
But this is the thing. This is the thing, Jason. Relationships in this industry. I mean, it's like I haven't seen you literally in like 13 years, and I, honest to God, feel like we just had lunch yesterday. Yeah. Right? It's so. Anyway, yeah.
That's good. No, they're one is in heaven, the other is in hell for sure.
Well, I can't tell you how much I appreciate you taking the time this afternoon. Oh, hi, Millie.
Separated.
Oh, what? What's that?
Be.
Oh, yeah. Hey. My daughter Millie, she's very interested in joining us under the hood from time to time. Yeah. So.
Are we being recorded?
We are being recorded. We are currently streaming live.
Oh my God.
And this is one of my oldest friends, one of my great friends, Jason Ferrante, who is in Miami, Florida right now.
I feel bad for your pets.
Well,
Me too, but you know what? They had a really good long life. It was awesome.
just like when we had to say goodbye to our Prince Red Dragon, we had a beta fish that we had for a
Yeah,
little
he
while.
died
He died a couple days ago.
2
Yesterday.
days ago.
Yeah, and we had our Daisy, our yellow lab, passed
She
away.
died when I was 4.5.
Yeah. It happens. That's the circle of life, as we've all
That
come to
totally,
realize.
totally is, and I'm not ready for another one yet. But we have some friends with dogs I have lots of dog nieces and nephews, which is good.
That is good. That's great. Well, hey man, I can't tell you how much I appreciate you being on here, and it was such a pleasure to talk with you and to hear your expertise. And tell you what, man, that whole end game thing, that's something that I honestly hadn't thought about in a long time.
I got
And
speak.
it's certainly shush.
Or something.
Oh, no, Millie, this is not your time to talk for a second. Hold on,
Okay.
please. Yeah. Anyway, I really appreciate you offering your thoughts and your time, and thank you for everyone who's tuned in. We really appreciate you joining the show. And let's see. Galen Scott Bauer says hello. Hey, Galen. Marty Saya.
Yeah, it's my cousin. Hey, Marty.
Oh, nice.
Brzezinski. What's up? Are you
Yeah. Get it.
Mama.
All right, man. Well, it has been way too long. Let's not wait another 13 years. And Millie, I'm sorry. What is it that you'd like to say?
What is it?
People out there in the world, I have no idea what your name is, but please watch Spirit Running Free on Netflix.
Oh, wow. There's a throw in for her favorite show that just came out. All right. Well, great. There you have it. What else how could we better end this episode than
If you're watching and you're a student or a teacher, be very clear with what your ethics are and define them in the room, and it'd be a happier place for everybody. Yeah.
I couldn't have said it better myself. Brilliant. Man, thanks so much. Appreciate you. Appreciate everyone tuning in.
Thanks, everybody.
All right.
Bye.